So Nidhi is a BITS Goa alumni who graduated with a major in CS, and she cracked the DAAD and MITACS scholarship. And she went on to do her MS at UT Austin, following which she got job offers from Facebook, and she also interned at Bloomberg. And Aditi cracked the DAAD scholarship. She did her thesis at University of Michigan. She got a lot of offers from MS universities as well, and she has deferred her application by 1 year due to the COVID situation. And yeah, so she's currently working at Amazon. So this segment, like this webinar, would mainly focus on DAAD and MITAC scholarship, but we'll also be addressing questions related to MS if the audience has any. So the first question to you, Nidhi, is what are the steps involved in the application procedure for DAAD WISE?
Yeah, so for DAAD, the major first step is to first find professors whose research interests align with yours. So you need to do a lot of research by looking up different professors and finding out which ones would with which professors you would like to work with, and then you would have to spend time mailing them to ask for taking you as a DAAD WISE intern. And if they do reply positively, then after that, your actual application starts, where you go to the DAAD WISE website and you fill out the application. And that includes details about you, your university, and your host professor and his university. So that does take up quite a bit of time. And also, apart from filling out and submitting forms online, you also have to mail some stuff physically. So you need a lot of supporting documents, including your transcript and a no objection certificate from BITS, your CV, and also a short research proposal, which gives an overview of what you'll be working on in your summer internship. So it has both a component where you have to post stuff and also send them in online. So you should factor in that time when you're considering the application deadline. So in a nutshell, like this, these are the steps involved in the application procedure for DAAD.
Aditi, would you like to add your perspectives to the application procedure? Like, did you follow something else? Did you do something additional apart from what Nidhi
No,
mentioned?
I think Nidhi pretty much covered it all. You find out profs that you want to work with and you reach out to them, and make sure you do that well in advance, because until and unless you get an acceptance from a university, you can't really apply for the DAAD scholarship. So you send in your covering letter to whichever profs that you're interested to work under, along with your CV, and if you want, you can send your transcript as well. And then once you have an acceptance, you go ahead with the DAAD process, which, like she said, has a lot of steps.
So, Aditi, how should an applicant mail the professors and follow up? Like, what should you actually write in the mail that that he'll consider you, or that your mail stands out from the rest of the applicants, for example?
Right. So I think most people while applying are in their third year, 3-1 probably. For me, I was a dual degree student. And so for me, I hadn't really done a lot of CS courses by the time I sat down to apply. So my mail was very broad, and I wasn't very specific about which area I wanted to do a project in. But I think for single degree students, they have a year of courses under their belt, so it's easier for them to know which area they want to work on. So I'd say just start by introducing yourself, talk about what program you're pursuing at your university, and then if you have any projects, you probably will attach your CV, but in case you want to expand on anything there, that the covering letter would be a great place to do that. Further, I think it's really important to sort of customize your mail and include details about what about that professor or that lab is it that interests you. So if there's a particular project that's being worked on at that lab that you are also interested in, mention why you're interested in pursuing that, and if you have any relevant courses that you've done that sort of align you to that area. So yeah, that's pretty much what I would have to say about a covering letter.
So you mentioned something about a cover letter. So what is a cover letter exactly? Like I'm not aware of the term.
So right. So when you mail the profs, the content of your email is basically a covering
Okay.
letter, to put it fancily. But yeah, it's basically what you say to them and introduce yourself, talk about what you're applying for that, and you want to do a
Yeah.
research internship and so on. So yeah.
So, Nidhi, you were a single degree student, so you probably had a lot of courses under your belt. So,
Yeah.
did you, apart from the courses, did you also mention something else? Like, did you have something else to mention? Probably some projects or something.
Yeah, so I would say the courses don't matter as much as your interest and your side projects or your other experience, because everyone has done or is going to do those courses at some point. So you kind of want to set yourself apart. And I also want to add that most of these professors that you mail, they will be quite busy and they likely receive a lot of mails. So you need to make sure your mail is worth the professor's time. So before you even think about composing a mail to the professor, like you should do your research about the field and the kind of work the professor is doing before you mail them. And like maybe make sure your subject says something like DAAD WISE application 2020, so that they know what it's about and they open it. And also, this is probably not an issue for Indians, but you should make sure to address them respectfully, like preferably by their full name and maybe with a doctor or a professor in front of that. And yeah, and like Aditi said, yeah, like do make sure you know what they're working in. So what I did was I used to read like a paper or two of their top publications, and then once you do that, you can like talk about how you liked their work and how it aligns with what your interests are. And maybe if you're and like maybe if you really want to, you can even maybe talk about some technicality of their research, like maybe talk about how you really like the approach and you'd love to work on an extension of it or ask some questions. So really show that you are very interested in working with that professor and customize your email. And also, you should say that in order to be selected for the DAAD WISE program, you need to have an acceptance letter from a German professor. And if you're selected, the funding will be taken care of by DAAD, because sometimes professors, they might be a bit iffy about taking international students because they're not sure about the funding. But if you specify clearly that they don't have to worry about funding, then they're much more likely to respond to you. And do make sure to mention the deadline in your email so that they know that that this is a time-sensitive mail and they need to get back to you. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I would like to add.
So is there a specific list of colleges whose professors you can mail to, or can you mail any German professor or from any German college for the DAAD scholarship?
It's essentially any university or institute that's state funded. So if it's a private research institute, then it won't be covered by DAAD. It has to be something that's funded by the government. So it's quite a large list. I mean, I don't think that you would find some professor and you would want to mail him, but then realize it's not covered by DAAD. I don't think the chances of that of happening are very high.
Yeah. So Aditi, what according to you plays the most important role in selection? Like, is it the CGPA, or is it the projects, or is it the stuff you have in your resume? Like, basically, if an applicant is there, what should he do to improve his chances to get the scholarship?
So if we're talking about the scholarship, I'd definitely say CG. It's sad, but it's true. You have a high CG and you probably get the DAAD scholarship. I don't know a lot of people who have, say a 9.5 plus and who didn't get the DAAD scholarship. But like I said, you need to get the acceptance first. And for that, you probably, it would be good if you had some projects that you can talk about, or some kind of work X in research or whatever. It could be an SOP, or if you've done, for example, my practice school one was at Homi Baba Center. So that's a science research organization. So I think that was another work X that I could add. So anyone who has done some kind of research work in PS, I think that's also a great research project that you can add to your CV. So I think from the application to the university front, CG may not be that big, an issue, because universities in Europe don't necessarily give that much importance to CG as, say, Indian universities do. But for the DAAD scholarship, you'll definitely need to have a really good CGPA.
So, could you define a good CGPA for DAAD, like a range which
So when I applied, my CG was 9.5, and I think generally 9.4 or 9.3 plus is a good idea. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nidhi. I'm not sure about like the range, but
Yeah,
yeah.
at the time of applying, mine was 9.4. But so DAAD itself has a cutoff of, I think, 8.5 or 8.6.
Yeah.
And I think the most difficult part about getting selected for DAAD is getting a positive reply from a professor. So very few people do get like positive replies from professors. So finally, when you do apply for DAAD, the pool of applicants is quite small. So if you do get a positive reply from a professor, your chances of finally getting the DAAD scholarship are quite high. So I would say even if your CGPA is not that good, but if you do have very good projects and if you can get a professor to take you in, you should still definitely apply because if you do get a reply from professor, your chances of getting in are quite high since there aren't that many applicants. I say compared to MITACS, where the application itself is kind of a free for all, so there are thousands of applicants, and from there you have to get selected. And yes, and apart from CGPA, I would say another selection criteria for DAAD, I think, is the quality of the project. So you have to write a bit about your research proposal when you're applying. And so I think there it's very helpful to be clear about exactly what you'll be working on and what your research goals are. So once you do get an acceptance from a professor, you should communicate with your professor so that you can have a really good research proposal and improve your chances of getting selected, especially if your CGPA is not that good. So then you can try to capitalize on your research proposal and also other things like a letter of reference that you need from a BITSH professor and other projects.
So, so what is the process once we get an acceptance by the host professor? Do we just upload it on the website, or is there something specific you have to do? Nidhi?
Yeah, so firstly, if a professor accepts you, you need to ask them to give you an invitation letter with their university stamp, and that letter has to include your start and end date and possibly an overview of what you'll be working on. And I think apart from that, it's just a process of collecting all your documents. So you need to collect your no objection certificate from BITS and get together your transcript, your CV, and all your immigration documents. You'll need to upload photocopies of your passport, and so it's just a process of a lot of administrative work. There's nothing there's not much brain work involved. So it's just a process of going there and completing the application in time.
So, is the issuance of the visa managed by the DAAD committee, or do you have to do something from your side?
Yeah, did I answer it or?
Yeah, that's it. Nidhi, you can speak, I guess.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sure. So, so again, like the visa process, it's quite straightforward. But like one caveat is that you need to figure out your accommodation before you can apply for a visa. So, and finding accommodation, I think after getting accepted by a professor, I think that's the most difficult part after that. So, you need to make sure your accommodation is set. You need to have proof of your accommodation before you can go and get a visa. But apart from that, it's not a big deal. Like it's not like US where they interview you and stuff. You just sort of go and show your acceptance letter and your proof of accommodation and your other documents, and you will get the visa.
So Aditi, any preparation tips before leaving for Germany? Like how do you actually find accommodation? Some Facebook group or yeah?
So I'd say, at least for Bitsians here, reach out to seniors. If you're going to a city like Frankfurt or Munich, there are really good chances that there will be someone or the other from BITS who's there and who could probably help you out on getting started with where you can find a com. I went to a really small town, so there wasn't anyone from BITS already there, but I did reach out to my host professor and the people working under him, and he assigned like a student who was willing to go and check places out for me. So I think in Germany especially, it's very important to be very sure and like double check, triple check the place that you're getting, because I do know people who have been taken for a ride on some of these websites. So if possible, try to get people to check out the apartment that you've chosen before you sign anything or confirm anything. And other good places for finding apartments are websites like Airbnb. I found my apartment, which was a studio apartment on Airbnb. Um, Usually the people who list their accommodations on Airbnb are verified, so the chances of getting like scammed are very low. And you can personally talk to the landlord, and if possible try and get a video call scheduled, see if you can get take a look at their house and just make sure everything's fine before you sort of sign anything.
So, Nidhi, would you like to add something to it?
Yeah. So if it's possible, the best thing would be to try to get student housing in the university. But that's very difficult and it fills up very quickly. You'd probably have to apply even before the results come out. But I do know people who did that and then they had very cheap accommodation, and also they minimized their commute time. So you could try there, and also like Aditi said, you could ask your professor if he or she could give any leads with regards to university housing. And there are also student union sites for each city, and that usually has a list of temporary or short-term accommodation for students. And along with Airbnb, there's also Couchsurfing, which is another website. So you can also try to find short-term accommodation from there.
Yeah. So basically, we have to have an accommodation fixed before the application deadline, right?
No.
Like we have to. No.
No, you see, when you submit your application, that time they don't care about accommodation. But once you get selected for DAAD and you need to go and apply for your visa, that's when you need to search for accommodation before you go to apply for your visa.
Okay. So, Nidhi, while in Germany, how was your work experience? Like, how many hours per day did you work during the internship?
Yeah, so I think the working hours are very professor and project dependent. And my professor was very flexible and didn't enforce any working hours. In fact, there were some days where I worked from home. So I would say I would spend about 7 to 8 hours working each day in the beginning, and towards the end, it got a bit longer. And in general, the work experience was really good because I was exposed firsthand to how research is done. And I also spent time with other PhD students in the lab, so I got to see what their life and work was like.
Yeah, I think, like, how was your experience?
So my experience was amazing, to be honest. I had a lot of fun. Same as Nidhi, there were no work hours set for me. It was pretty flexible and I could go in and come out whenever I wanted. I usually went at about 9 and was the first person to enter the lab, and by 5 or 6 people were out. So I'd say Germans are very smart about their time management, so they don't work 10 hours a day. They work hard and then they also party very hard. I also visited a lot of other countries because as a student you have a lot of opportunities to pay 50 or 75 euros to a student organization like Student Universe or whatever, Uniflup, one of those, and just get on a bus and do a weekend trip and fully exploit your Schengen visa because you can go wherever you want. And yeah, like I think the whole experience of sort of seeing what research culture internationally is like, I think that was a game changer for me. I may not have done like a lot of path-breaking work because it's just 2 months, but my perspective towards what research can be like really changed. So for example, there was a PhD student in my lab and he had his PhD defense while I was pursuing my internship. So we all got to attend it, and although I didn't understand much because it was in German, but just the atmosphere, like everyone was celebrating it, and you're popping champagne and having cake, and just that's not something you see very often here in India. So you never really see that kind of celebratory and respectful attitude towards research. And I think that is something that I really brought back home with me.
Can you like briefly explain the research and the project that which you worked on, Aditi?
Sure. So my project was on gradient enhanced techniques for support vector regression. So my lab was working mostly on CFD data, which is computational fluid dynamics. I didn't really need to know much about CFD, but most of their data was like that. So they had drag and lift and all those mechanical engineering terms. And basically, the models that they would typically run had a lot of constraints, like there was, say, limited data or high computation costs and so on. So they wanted to explore the potential of, enhancing the traditional SVR models that they had by using gradient information. So that was pretty much what my project was about.
And what was your project, Nidhi?
Yeah, so my project was about anomaly detection to detect defects in images of bridges. So essentially, you're given an image of a bridge, and you want to be able to detect in an automated way whether it has defects like cracks or other kinds of defects. So essentially, my internship was about really exploring different kinds of anomaly detection algorithms, and then like selecting one of them and then diving deep into that, like understanding the math behind it and implementing it. So yeah, that was what my entire project was about. You're muted.
During a stay at Germany, did you also experience any challenges of any sort?
Yeah, I mean, so before I went to Germany, I didn't know how to cook. So I would say that, I mean, it probably sounds like silly now, but I would say that's very, very important, because especially if you're a vegetarian, there aren't too many vegetarian options out there. And even if you aren't, it's not really the best idea to spend your money eating out every day. You'd rather save that money and use it to travel to other countries. So I would say, yeah, like do make sure that you can be self-sufficient before you go there. Once you go there, you really need to live like an adult. You have to take care of working, cooking, cleaning, everything on your own. And apart from that, I can it's possible that because of the language barrier and the culture difference, it can be a bit isolating at times. So for example, there are very few people on the street, and sometimes you might go a whole day without really interacting with someone face to face. So if you don't know any fellow DAAD scholars there, or maybe other people who speak English or your language, it can get quite lonely. So I would say try not to fall into that rut of coming home immediately after you're done with work for the day. Try to go out and meet more people and socialize, and that will make you feel good. And you'll also learn a lot about other people and different cultures and what it's like to be in a different country. Yeah.
Were there any challenges that you faced, Aditi?
So luckily for me, my mom prepped me and like taught me how to cook everything before I left. So that wasn't a big concern, though I do agree for vegetarians, it's extremely difficult. I remember when I reached, there was a Subway right next to my house and I was super happy. But I walk in and there's just one option for vegetarians, the classic veggie delight. And by the end of 2 months, I was so done with it that I probably haven't eaten that ever again. So yeah, like you should know how to fend for yourself in terms of food, especially if you're a vegetarian. If you're not, then you'll probably add a few more dishes to your usual list of options that you pick from. Other than that, language barrier was a big issue for me. I was in a very small town, so most people only spoke German, especially if you go to a shop to buy your groceries and things like that. They take a while to switch to English, or they aren't very comfortable with English. So I would strongly suggest anyone who's at least going to a smaller town to try and pick up basic German. I did, do a few courses on a few sessions on Duolingo. I didn't do them very well though, clearly. But yeah, I just try not to get very rattled by anything. I think in one of the first few days there, I got into a wrong bus and I didn't realize. So I think there was like 105A and 105B, and I probably got into the wrong one. And it took me all the way to outside the city to some random IKEA, and I completely freaked out. So yeah, and unfortunately I didn't have mobile data then. So make sure you always have mobile data. You'll probably have great Wi-Fi in your lab, but invest in data. It'll cost you a lot too. but please get it, and make sure that you are on the grid always. So if you ever need any kind of if you ever need to rely on maps or any other internet-based facility, you can do that.
Yeah. So there are a few questions from the audience regarding who is eligible for the DAAD scholarship. So one person asked that can dualites in their fourth year apply for DAAD WISE? Nidhi?
I think Aditi will be better equipped to answer this question because I'm not too sure about the eligibility requirements for dualites.
Yeah.
Sure. So for dualites, I believe you can apply in your 5th, 6th, 7th, or 8th semesters, and for single degree, it's just 5th and 6th. So yes, you can apply to go after your 3rd year as well as 4th year. But you can just go once. So if you've already applied and gotten selected by DAAD, you probably can't apply again, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. So Nidhi, could you walk us through the MITACS application process as well?
Yeah, so the MITACS application procedure is a lot more straightforward and less time consuming compared to DAAD. So essentially it's this long online application that has different parts that you need to fill out. And you essentially need to fill out your research interests, your skills and your achievements, and also your reasons for wanting to pursue research at Canada. So you should spend time answering these questions well, because these are the questions that I think are important for getting selected and also getting matched to projects. And don't be afraid to list out all your academic achievements and any skill you have that you feel might show that you will be good at research. And you also have to choose 3 to 7 research projects from a list of available projects that are present in their online database. And there are a lot of different kinds of projects. So this part is a bit time consuming if you want to carefully go through, like parse each project and then decide whether it's a good fit for you and then filter it out to your final pool of projects that you want to select. And then you need to and then you need to attach your CV and also, again, a reference letter from a professor from your Indian university, and also your transcripts. So yeah, I guess like the most important part of the MITACS application is what you fill in terms of your research interests and skills and how they align with the projects you've chosen. And also I think the reference letter from the professor is quite important, because what I noticed was that MITACS is not as CGPA centric as DAAD, because at the time of applying, there were a lot of people who had extremely high CGPAs who did apply for MITACS, but they didn't get selected. And I suspect that's either because their reference letter was not from a professor who could vouch for them personally, or that they didn't really write those sections about their research interests and skills well enough. So yeah.
So while choosing like the MITACS projects, should you like give more weightage to the projects, or should you give more weightage to the university or the professor while selecting projects?
Oh, I did not care about the university or the professor. I just went by how excited I got looking at the description of a project. And I think that helps, because it helps you to be more genuine when you're also writing about yourself and why you want to pursue research there. So I think that's I think if you do that sincerely, it will work for you.
And also about LORs, I just realized. So did you take LORs from BITSG professors, or did you like take it from PS1 instructors? Like, what was your...
No, so so you need just one LOR for both DAAD and MITACS. So I went to the same professor for both DAAD and MITACS because I knew that professor well, and for DAAD, the recommendation letter is not a free-form letter. It's got a bunch of questions that the professor has to answer, and they are quite specific questions, like how productive was the applicant while working with you and stuff like that. So if you go to a professor who doesn't know you that well, where you've probably just taken a course under him, it'll be quite obvious that they're just kind of writing a generalized letter. So I think do make sure to try to like if you're in your first year or second year, try to build a rapport with professors, try to do projects under them. It's okay even if they're informal projects, but if you just interact with professors enough professionally so that they can vouch for you, or maybe even do TA-ships under them, that will really help you.
So Aditi, did you also approach professors, or did you approach your PS1 instructor by any chance?
Oh, absolutely. So something I think I should mention is that I didn't send out the standard 20, 40, 50, 100 mails that most people do while applying for DAAD. I got really lucky in that aspect, in the sense that I approached a professor in my department at BITSH, and he knew someone at the university that I finally went to. So he kind of encouraged me to apply under that professor. And because I wasn't very specific about which area I wanted to work in, I just wanted to have that experience. So I did apply, and I had also done some math courses that were relevant for me for working at that lab. So I worked at the scientific computing lab, which is not a very CS lab. It's more of a math and CS lab, which worked out really well for me. So yeah, I would definitely recommend everyone to approach profs in their department that they are close to or that they feel might have contacts. And even otherwise try to explore other contacts that you have, probably some personal contacts if you have any, and because that goes a long way. So yeah.
So Nidhi, why did you choose DAAD over MITACS?
Yeah, so the project at DAAD seemed better, and I felt a lot more excited about my project at DAAD. And also, by the time I got selected for MITACS, I had already established a rapport with my host professor from DAAD. So I was already in regular contact with him, and I had started doing a bit of background reading. And I had quite clear expectations for my project at DAAD, and I knew what was going to happen, and I sort of felt quite comfortable about what was going to happen at DAAD. But for MITACS, I really wasn't too sure. I didn't know the professor. I didn't know how it would be. So yeah, I think that's the main reason I chose DAAD over MITACS. And also, I just felt more excited about Germany as a location compared to Canada. And I guess on some subconscious level, like, it doesn't make much sense, but Germany sort of felt closer to home than Canada. And it was the first time I was going out of the country alone. So I think that also played a small role.
Yeah. So Aditi, how much did these scholarships help you in your future prospects, like career choice or MS?
I would say the DAAD experience helped me a lot. I think it pretty much shaped, the sort of professional trajectory that I chose, in the sense that I would not have made as informed a decision about whether I wanted to get into the industry or into academia or pursue higher studies if I hadn't done DAAD, because my perspective, as I'm guessing most people's, is about research and academia and higher studies was very warped, and I didn't really know what research really can be like at a lab in an international university. So yeah, I think I learned a lot in terms of technical learning, but I think I also got that added perspective that I lacked, and that just made my decision making a lot more enriched and a lot more informed. So yeah, I would definitely say, even if you're sure you don't want to pursue research, try and apply for these internships. You literally have nothing to lose. They're usually sponsored, and it's during your summer, so why not explore another country while you're at it?
So Nidhi, would you like to add anything to this?
Yeah, so mine is a similar experience to Aditi's. So doing the research internship and being exposed to so many new developments in the field while I was there, it really made me aware of how much I don't know. And I think that was one of the reasons I started seriously thinking about studying further. And at the time when I was deciding whether I should take up DAAD, I also had an internship offer from Intuit. So I was very confused that time because I didn't know if I wanted to pursue research or get into the industry, because if I wanted to get into the industry, the internship at Intuit would help more. But then I thought that I should get exposed to research and see what it's like before I close that door. And so that's why I chose DAAD. And I think that was a very good decision, because after that, I anyway had PS2 where I could experience industry life. And so like before I went for MS, I had a good perspective in both places. And in terms of applying for MS, my DAAD internship really helped a lot. Because first of all, I had a letter of recommendation now from my host professor, and that added a lot of value to my application. And I could also write about my DAAD project in my SOP, and also I could add it to my resume, and I could talk about how that aligned with what I wanted to pursue for masters. So yeah, so it really adds a lot of value to your professional CV.
So I guess we mostly covered everything related to internships or scholarships. There are a few questions which Anvita would take it further, but there are a few MS questions which everyone had, like a few brief MS questions. So, for example, Nidhi, why do you choose UT Austin, and what other colleges did you apply to for your MS?
Yeah, so the main thing I liked about UT Austin is its small class size. So when I was deciding, so I got admits from Columbia and UCST and USC, and among all of these, like UT Austin had a very small class size, and it's also ranked within the top 10 universities in computer science. And compared to other universities, its tuition fees and its cost of living is much lower. And if you're planning to fund it yourself or take a loan, it's definitely a lot less burden if your tuition fees and cost of living is less. And I also really liked its course structure and its research facilities and all of its faculty members. It's all very state of the art. So when you go there, you're going to be exposed to current top-notch research that's being done, and that's a really great place to be. Yeah.
Aditi, could you tell us about what colleges you applied to, and why did you choose those colleges specifically?
Sure. So I applied to probably 10 or 11 universities because I was really scared that, I would apply to less and then regret it later. And I got a couple of admits. So I pretty much, while applying, I considered a lot of factors, to be honest. I looked at, I went on all the websites of the universities that I was considering, and I looked at their course curriculums of the programs that I was interested in. And I also checked out like the profiles of the professors there and what kind of work that's currently been going on at their labs. Because I think that's really important if you want to do your masters, even if it's not like a thesis-based masters, you will probably end up working under a prof at least once. So it's good to be at a university where you think that your interests are aligned with the labs as well. So I applied to, like I said, a bunch of colleges. There was UIUC, there was also UT Austin, UCLA, and so on. And I have deferred two of my admits, CMU and UT Austin. So Nidhi, I'll be reaching out to you again soon. Yeah, the reasons for UT Austin are exactly what she said. I really like that it has a smaller class size and it's among the top universities in the US. And as for CMU, I applied to the computational data science program, and that is a program that interests me. So I was kind of tied between the two and didn't want to risk it because COVID. That's how I ended up deferring two admits.
So, Aditi, there were a few questions about your thesis as well at University of Michigan. So, how did you go about that application process, and how did you fund your, let's say, your stay during the thesis? So, could you just briefly walk us through your entire application process?
Sure. So, I think having had DAAD was a great plus point while applying for my thesis, because that was probably a really strong area on my CV. I did kind of what I would have done for DAAD had I, not gotten accepted so early. Just check out labs in areas that you're interested in. By then, I knew that I wanted to pursue my thesis in either ML or NLP or an area that brings both together. So I specifically looked at machine learning labs at universities and went through the projects that are going on, went through whether they have any openings. I think it's really important to spend time on the professors' web pages as well, because some of them either explicitly say that I'm not offering internships, so please don't write to me. And others, say that if you've read my webpage, please include your subject. And they give some subject line that if you don't follow, they probably won't open your mail. So I think it's important to do a lot of research before you start applying. Identify where you are interested to, pursue your thesis, and just start shooting mails. Uh, Spend a lot of time on them, of course. Try to, your covering letter for a thesis has to be really, really strong, especially in the US, because it's not very easy to get a thesis opportunity. Um, and don't lose heart. I mean, sometimes professors just end up not checking their mail. If you want, you can sort of track your mails. There's a lot of divided opinion on that. I chose to track my mails, but a lot of people don't. So I guess take your call on that. And yeah, just hope for the best and give it your best shot is what I would say. Have, sort of backups if you want. Like if you're hellbent on doing a thesis, try and secure a thesis at an Indian university as well, because it might be easier to at least get a response from professors in India. So yeah, maybe also side by side apply to labs at IISc or IIIT Hyderabad or wherever that you might be interested in, or look at corporate thesis like MSR. So explore all your options basically. Once again, I'd say reach out to profs. I'm guessing by your fourth year, you would have made strong connections in your college department. So reach out to them, tell them you want to do a thesis, and ask them if they can help you in any way. I didn't during my thesis, but I think it's important to do that. About funding, in the US, it's extremely difficult to get funding. So while applying, I didn't really expect my professor to fund me. But I think he had just gotten a grant, and so I got really lucky in that sense. And he, upright sort of told me that, okay, I'll be upfront, that I'll be funding you. So that worked out well for me. If you're applying to countries like Germany, there are a lot of funding opportunities. Mostly your lab or prof will fund you. If he doesn't, there are other foundations. Like there is something known as the HJK Foundation, where I had also applied. So yeah, there's no dearth of funding opportunities in Germany and I guess the rest of Europe. So if you have constraints about funding, try to apply to countries that you might be likely to get funding in.
So Nidhi, you chose to do a PS2 over a thesis, even though you had you had planned to go for MS. So why did you choose to do PS2, and did it somehow negatively impact or positively impact your profile?
Yeah, so I did my PS2 in 4.2. So by the time I did my PS2, all the applications for MS were already over. So that way it didn't have any impact on what my application was. And in terms of having a research component in your application, I already had DAAD. And also I had done my PS1 at IGCAR, which was also a research institute. And then I had done a bunch of other projects under professors. So I was quite confident of the research aspect of my profile. And I felt I didn't need to go to the trouble of applying for thesis and finding professors and going through that whole process again. And then up until this point, I didn't have any industry experience. So I felt PS2 would be a really good place to get some industry experience before I go for MS. So I think it was quite helpful because once I came to, once I started doing my MS, when applying for when applying for industrial internships in the US, that time your work experience in PS really helps, because there they don't care much about what kind of research you've done. They want to know if you have work experience or not. So having my PS2 for 6 months on my resume really helped me there.
Yeah. So Anvita would be taking over now, and she'll just be addressing some questions which we have in the chat and which we had in the Google form. So over to you, Anvita.
Yeah, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we were asked a lot of questions. We'll try to go through most of them. So for Aditi, the first one was, will a research intern abroad in any way impact placements? I've heard companies aren't likely to take a candidate if they show signs of continuing to study abroad.
So I haven't really tried for placements. I got my Amazon job offer through PS. But from whatever I've seen, I don't think it has such a big impact that, they out and out reject you for a job. Especially internships like DAAD or MITACS, they're just 2 months long and they're during the summer. So it's not a very strong research mindset if you just have a DAAD or a MITACS. Furthermore, I think you can be really smart while doing your placements. Like you can, like while I sat for my internship interviews, I obviously did not highlight my DAAD project a lot. It depended on the role and company that I was applying to. So there were companies where they wanted some kind of math background. So there I brought out my math SOPs or my DAAD project a little bit. Companies that wanted just coding and DSA and so on, I probably didn't even mention my math SOPs. So you have a lot of freedom to sort of play around with your CV as necessary. So I would not recommend anyone to not apply to DAAD and MITACS simply because they're scared that that would end up with them not having a job. That's extremely unlikely.
Okay. For Nidhi, the first question was uh, please explain or elaborate on the process of shortlisting universities and categorizing them as safe or moderate. A bit of background: I'm to graduate in 2021 and looking to apply for MS. I know which field I want to focus on and have a list of universities I would want to prefer. But how do I select the best fit and best set of colleges, keeping in mind that some may be way beyond my possibility of getting in?
Yeah, so for this, I feel utilizing the BITS network is really helpful. So I think BITSians for each other, every year they publish this database of all the MS admits of different BITSians who've gotten to different universities, and also their profile, like what was their CGPA, where did they do thesis, PS, did like what projects did they have, everything is there. So I made use of that a lot when I was deciding how to categorize my universities as ambitious, moderate, and safe. So I would find BITSians with profiles similar to mine, and I would look at what admits and rejects they got, and based on that, I would categorize. And yeah, I think apart from that, you can also look at other things like the ranking on US news and decide according to that. But yeah, I think the main thing that I did was make use of that huge online database that BITSians have. Yeah.
Okay, so for Aditi, someone asked, does building products in a SDE role offset a publication's GPA or a GPA for master's application? If yes, do you have any tips to share for the same?
I think Nidhi should probably answer this question. I would say that again, it probably depends on also what you want to do in the future. Like if you think that you might have inclinations towards, either a thesis-based master's or a PhD, then a publication would definitely help. And also, if you're gunning for top schools and want that and nothing else, then also a publication would really help you. Whereas, if you want to get back to the industry post your masters, WorkX might be a good idea. And if you think that your WorkX is going to enable you to build products that actually have an impact, and you can also get a great LOR from your manager, then WorkX would be a good option. But I think Nidhi, you can probably supplement or improve my answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can add to this. So essentially, universities they have different like they have one axis for each kind of metric where they want to evaluate the applicant. So CGPA is separate, your GRE score is separate, your letter of recommendation is separate, and then there's your resume, which includes your research and your work experience. So if you haven't done so well on one axis, it's not necessary that the other axis is, I mean, it depends on how bad it is, right? I mean, so like if you have a really low CGPA, I mean, they're just going to reject you outright because they do want to maintain a standard. They do want a minimum cutoff. But of course, like so things like publications and work experience, they come under the same bracket of your resume. So there, if you don't have publications, but if you have great work experience, then it's fine. But if they're on different axes, like you cannot substitute a bad CGPA with a great GRE score or amazing work experience. So yeah.
Okay. So the next question for Nidhi is, you have a lot of research experience. What made you shift to a software engineering role later?
Yeah. So while I was doing my MS, I took a bunch of research focused courses, and I also did a lot of research work during my MS. And then I knew, I mean, I didn't hate it, but I was a bit indifferent towards it. And I knew that if I wanted to pursue research further, it would mean like applying for a PhD. And I feel that when you decide to apply for a PhD, you have to be really sure about it. You have to be extremely passionate about some narrow field. And I didn't have that. I mean, I enjoyed research. I was fine with what I was doing, but it wasn't something that I was super passionate about. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I'm going to spend the next 6 years of my life doing this. So I felt that maybe I should join the industry. And then if I feel that I'm getting jaded by the industry, or I feel the need to come back to research, then I would always have that option. But once you start doing a PhD and you kind of get stuck in that, I think it's difficult to switch back to industry.
Okay. So for Aditi, someone has asked, how should one decide on the subfield within their major to pursue a research internship in considering CS major?
So I would say most of us, or at least I, did not have a lot of research experience before I went for my summer internship. So it might be a little tricky to do that. Of course, courses are one way to sort of decide, maybe, if you've really enjoyed a course and really enjoyed the assignments, probably because you get a lot more hands-on experience in that. Other than that, I am not so sure. I think it's a little difficult to know which area you want to do your internship in right in your third year. But for thesis, I think you probably have a better idea because of the 4 years that you've done courses and probably done other internships, probably read papers. I think reading papers is another good way to sort of know what interests you and what doesn't. Sometimes you read about something and that might pique your interest, and you might want to what you can do further on that. So
a lot of the questions ask, like, so if CG is important, then how much CG is like minimum to get a good internship, and if it's not good, do you have any tips for increasing it? There's a lot of questions like that. So either
I would say don't worry too much about your CG. Like, beyond a point, it's not like the be all and end all, honestly. I know someone who applied for DAAD, got accepted into a university in Germany, but did not get the WISE scholarship, even though she was probably like just 9 or just above 9. So there's no end to the CG, the run for getting a great CG. But what she did do was that she then applied to France on her own, universities in France, and she got accepted at another university. And most universities in France have the policy that if there is an intern coming in, they have to fund them. So sometimes, there are countries that will most probably fund you. So you can always apply to those countries. And not all scholarships, I think, are as CG oriented as DAAD. I think there's like a whole scale. So I think I would rate SN Bose as the highest. It's extremely difficult to get in, and there's a very strict eligibility criteria as well. I think you need to be in the top 1, 2, or 3 in your department to even apply. So that's extremely difficult. And then there's probably DAAD, and then there's MITACS. I don't know where chatback would fall on the scale. But so yeah, there's no dearth of opportunities, and I would not say that. I would not want to put a number and say that, oh, this CG is good enough and anything below that is not. This is not a diplomatic answer at all. This is like completely from my heart. I think you should just aim to get as much as you can. And if you can't, like, that's not the end of the world. There's a lot of other alternatives for you to explore, and you must explore those.
Nidhi, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think Aditi covered it pretty well. I don't think I have anything else specific to add to that.
Okay. So there were some questions in the chat. I think, yeah, how was your date of joining decided?
For that?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Oh, so that is decided by the professor. So once the professor accepts you, when he gives you the invitation letter, there the professor specifies a start and end date. So my internship was, I think it started end of May and it ended in the beginning of August, because my professor actually wanted me to join for 4 months, but then that wasn't possible because because college was starting and there were placements that were going to happen, so I couldn't afford to miss that. So I sort of tried to stretch it like an extra week in May and an extra week at the end of July, so it became almost 3 months. So yeah, it's not a DAAD specific thing. It depends on your professor.
Okay. One more question was, how hard is it to get a Schengen visa?
Oh, it's not at all. Once you are selected for DAAD, if you have that acceptance letter and you have your proof of accommodation, then you are 100% going to get the Schengen visa.
Okay. Okay, we're kind of running out of time. So we'll be posting Aditi's and Nidhi's LinkedIn profiles in the chat, and you guys can approach them for questions. But yeah, I think we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys for coming on the webinar. It was really useful. It was nice talking to you guys.
Thanks, Amrita. This was really useful, and I do think that it's very important to have this kind of community. So I think great job, all of you guys. I don't know, I haven't interacted with all of y'all on the organizing committee, but kudos, like, well done.
Thank you.
So it's a really great initiative, and I hope this continues. I think it's so great to see this happening.
Thank you. See you guys. Bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks for organizing this.
Yeah, it was great having you guys, and I'm sure people picked up a lot of insights from this process. So,
Yeah, I hope it was
we did want
useful.
to talk about your work experience at Facebook and let's say at Amazon, but we already crossed the 10:30 limit, so maybe we'll schedule it some other time.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.